Okay, now that we've tackled those standard questions, let's actually apply what you learned on that second question to what we would consider a pretty tough LSAT games question. And we're going to attack this a little bit differently here. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you the question without the answer choices. What I'd like you to do is consider this idea of generating inferences first, as Noah just showed you, and see if you can predict what the correct answer is going to be to this sort of a question. Okay, see if you can predict it. I'm going to give you about a minute to think about it, and then I'll ask you for your reactions. Okay, for those of you watching the recording, that was probably much less than a minute for you. So if you want, go ahead and take a second now and pause the recording and take your time with it. For those of you in the room, go ahead and type into the chat window, what do you anticipate the answer to be here? Let me just wait for a couple of responses. Anyone have any thoughts? What do you anticipate the answer to be? Could be a couple of possibilities. Go ahead and type them in. Oh, interesting. MN, says Bethel. Any other ideas? Or maybe you mean OR. Okay, Laurel is saying OR. PD is typing in. Let's see what PD has to say. MNOPKRS. Interesting. So we've got all of our possibilities up here. Good work, you guys. Bethel, if you don't mind jumping on the mic, can you take us through how you came up with your best guess at this point? And feel free to kind of direct me through some diagramming. I'll go ahead and draw on the board as you're talking.
I just kind of looked at the diagram and I looked at the fact that opening is third, so O is third. That means that in has to be before it. And we also know that R is at the end, or rather 6, so P and M has to be before it, so I just picked 2 numbers, or letters rather.
Okay, so great work. So if we kind of plop these down into our diagrams here, O third, R6, just as we did on number 2, right? Before we do anything, we want to follow the chain of inferences. One thing Bethel said is, look at this. We know from our tree that N has to come before O. Okay, so that has to be one of the letters that comes before O. So I'm just going to put that in Noah's cloud of mystery here. What do you think, you guys? Do we know, and let's just kind of ignore the rest of this for now, do we know what else has to come before O? Take a second and think about that. Okay, let me ask you this. Bethel says no. Could it be P? Could P come before O in addition to the N? We're for sure about the N. Could P come before O? PD, you say no. Why? Demita says no. Why not? Aha! If P comes before the O, doesn't M also have to come before the O? I mean, M is before P, in fact. So if we put P before the O, now we've got 3 letters before the O. That's impossible. We've only got room for 2. Okay, so it's not going to be P. Let me just kind of cross that out. How about R? Can R come before the O? Just type in a yes or a no here. Okay, how about the K? Can the K come before the O? Mike, I think you're on it. Yeah, only the M could come before the O. Okay? For similar reasons, right? So let me ask you, which comes first, the M or the N? Mike, go ahead and jump on.
we don't know which one would come first. The M and the N themselves could come in either order.
Fantastic. And that's an inference we made earlier on. It's actually an uninference, if you might call it that. We can't make any inferences about N and M. Their order is uncertain. So beautiful. We've got M and N before the O. Let's move on, and let's think about what has to come after the R. So let's think about just this portion of the diagram here. What do you guys think? What has to come after the R? Do we know? Laurel, what do you think? You want to jump on? Okay, your mic didn't work there, Laurel. Some people are saying S. Does S have to come after the R? Well, let's kind of consider a similar approach that we took last time. We know that O cannot come after the R because O is third. We know it's not going to be N or M, right? We know it can't be P because P comes before R. Could it be K? Could K be the letter that comes after R? What do you guys think? Yes or no? Why not? I mean, there's no relationship here, is there? Yeah, Laurel, you've nailed it here. If we put K after the R, then S would have to come after the R as well, and that's too many letters after the R. So we know that S has to come after the R. Perfect. What letters are left? What letters are left? Well, the P and the K, right? The P and the K are left. Those we know are in a fixed order. Those are in a fixed order. P has to come before the K. Those two letters have to happen in the middle there. Those are the only two remaining spots. Look at this, guys. Look at how much we figured out without even looking at any of the answer choices. Without even looking at any of the answer choices. Give a smile or a hand clap if this makes sense. Give a frown or type into Noah if you have any questions. Yeah, Bethel. Bethel, you bring up a great point. You're really sharp on this stuff. I can tell from your previous responses. When you start feeling confident, the tendency is to try to shortcut the process a little bit and go a little bit more quickly. I tell you, it happens to me when I do that. I make mistakes. So kind of always go back to the basics, the fundamentals, and you'll find your accuracy going up. Okay, so now that we've got the diagram here, let's move on to, thank you, Noah. Let's move on to the question. Go ahead and answer the question, pull it in, and we'll see what you guys get. All right, we got a couple of answers coming in. What do you guys think? Okay, some great answers here. Let's take a look. Could Knight and Kimba be together? No way. Could Reaction and Painless be side by side? No way. Those are separated by K. The correct answer here, Openings and Mints. I could have M right before the O. That's the correct answer. Okay? It doesn't matter what the order is as long as they're consecutive according to the question. We wouldn't want to check the last two. We'd want to take our answer and move on. Great job, you guys. Let's take a look at a couple of things that separate kind of the average test taker from the 170 test taker. The average test taker is unsure of how to put all the rules together. I think we saw that from many of you at the beginning, and it's okay if you fall into this category at the start. You'll get better. The expert test taker uses consistent and effective diagramming approaches. The average test taker uses trial and error, for example, on a question like the one we just did. The expert test taker saves time by following a chain of inferences to start before looking at the choices. And last but not least, the average test taker is intimidated by logic games. You guys are going to move over to the right here. I know it. Even you, Bethel, you're going to start thinking logic games are fun once you start to get strong at them. All right. Thanks, guys. Great work.